Good evening. I am Cynthia Elliott, President of the Rochester Board of Education. We are gathered here this evening for a couple of items, but we are here at this point for a public hearing on our district-wide safety plan. And so we are having a public hearing with regard to the safety plan, and I'm going to call up the first a speaker with regard to, let me just say, this has got to be in regards to the public safety, to the hearing, to the district-wide safety plan. This is what we are here for. So if there's people who've signed up and not signed up to discuss directly the public, the district-wide public safety plan, then this is not the vehicle for it. Abdul Bounds.
Excuse me, President Elliott. We typically will open with some comments from Chief Scott first.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. And I'm supposed to say the, oh, Lord have mercy. Let me start over. It is now 5:33. I've introduced myself and we're convening this hearing. And I am joined by members of the district-wide safety team and Interim Superintendent Demario Strickland. Again, this public hearing is specifically for the district-wide safety plan. And I'm going to, the Rochester City School District is conducting this public hearing to gather input regarding the district-wide safety plan, which was posted on Friday, July 19th, 2024 for a 30-day period. I would like to introduce Chief Operations Officer Jacob Scott, who will speak about the district-wide safety plan. Chief Scott?
Yes, good evening, and thank you, President Elliott. Good evening to all of our commissioners. I would like to thank parents and community members for reviewing our district-wide school safety plan and providing comments. This 30-day public comment period is our effort to ensure the entire community has an opportunity to provide input on this plan. All comments will be evaluated and considered for inclusion in the plan. If a response is appropriate, we will include questions and answers along with the plan document on our website. In compliance with Education Law 2801 and Commissioner's Regulation 155.17, the district-wide safety team is a cross-functional team of stakeholders with many years of experience, sharing their insights to ensure that RCSD has a comprehensive approach to respond to acts of violence and other threats at our district. While this district-wide safety plan documents the comprehensive RCSD approach, building-level emergency response plans are developed at each school with the school community to identify a more individualized plan to account for differences in each building. This is another opportunity for parents' input on building-level safety efforts. Key activities that are performed to ensure the safety of our district include coordinating communication between school staff, law enforcement, and other first responders, coordinating district-wide school safety plan with each building-level emergency response plan, ensuring staff understanding of the district-wide school safety plan, ensuring the completion and yearly update of a building-level emergency response plan for each school building, selecting and implementing security-related technology and development of standard procedures for the use of security technology, coordinating appropriate annual safety, security, and emergency training for district and school staff. Also ensuring parents are informed of required school-based drills, ensuring that required evacuation and lockdown drills occur in all district buildings as required by Education Law 807, and ensuring the completion, update, and posting of all building-level emergency response plans by the dates designed by the Commissioner. We look forward to receiving any final comments as we finalize our district-wide plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Scott. We will now welcome public comments on the 24-25 district-wide safety plan. And again, I reiterate, speakers must speak about the district-wide safety plan, or I will shut you down. I will ask District Clerk Nguyen to introduce those signed up to speak. Again, as a reminder, the district-wide safety plan can be found on the website. at www.rcsdk12.org/safety plan, and public comment is invited through August 18th, 2024. And I'll turn it over to District Clerk Nguyen.
Thank you, President Elliott. The first speaker is Parent Abdul Bounds. Mr. Bounds, you will have 3 minutes.
Good evening, board members. Just listening at that plan and,
I don't know if your mic is on, Mr. Bounds. Could you make sure we can't really hear him?
hello, you can hear me
All
now?
right, we hear you now. Thank you.
All right, so, coming as a parent, and most of you guys know that I'm a staff within, we need better communication on both ends.
Mr. Bounds, talk up a little louder.
We need better communications on both ends. And again, speak from a safety point of view, when we make safety a top priority, they say we're making plans in X, Y, and Z, but can we start using common sense once again, please? I'm asking everybody, I'm an SSO and I'm a parent. At the end of the day, it's my life first and my children. The children that I pledge to serve in this district and protect with my life. Ask you guys again to think over this plan. I know we so anti-police around here, but I think it's time to get the Rochester Police Department back in schools. It's common sense. Do you want a mass shooting on your hands? Do you want a major stabbing on your hands? I do not want that on my blood. So once again, I'm standing up for my brothers in blue, and I'm asking for some type of more clarification to this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bounds. Oh,
Our next speaker is Ms. Kelly Cheadle, a community member. Ms. Cheadle, you'll have 3 minutes.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. My name is Kelly Cheadle. I'm the mother of 4 now young adults trying to find their way in the world. I believe that for the safety of our children long-term, as well as the safety of our entire community, that safety begins in places where our children feel that they belong. So while it's critical to have emergency plans in place for crises, we can't forget that safety is not just for emergencies. We must invest in the social emotional growth of our students to prevent crises. Too often we speak about the crisis interventions, Too often we speak about crisis intervention in terms of external control. And external controls don't generally persist on their own after the pressure is lifted. External control does not heal trauma. We have to stop relying upon control as the foundation for safety and provide our students and families tools for self-care, personal growth, and healthy relationships based in self-control. As you review your safety plan, I want to encourage you to invest in developing and expanding peer education and mediation models. No matter our age, our friends are often the first to know when we are struggling. By empowering students to help one another, even just on what to do when a problem is too big for a kid to manage on their own, empowering our students creates avenues for intervention before a spark erupts into a flame. I'm deeply grateful that my youngest was able to be part of the city's SOAR program in middle school. The SOAR program
Ms.
trained
Cheadle.
students.
Thank you,
that's
Ms.
the end of the
Cheadle.
time, ma'am.
We had 3 minutes?
That's 3 minutes.
Oh, wow. Well, check it
Thank
out.
you.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Ms. Mary Lupian, a community member.
I'm Mary Lupian. I'm on our city council. I am happy to be here before you, my colleagues, in our shared interest in the youth of this city. As a city council member, I've supported funding for placing our PD outside of schools during dismissal and arrival, because as a city school teacher myself, as a parent of a child in the district, I understand what it means to feel the feeling of safety in school. And I didn't want kids not to come to school because they didn't feel safe. But placing RPD outside the schools and even inside the schools really does nothing to solve the root causes. And ensuring the safety and well-being of our students is a priority that we all share. And I think we need to go further into understanding how it is that the conflicts arise. As a social emotional educator, I understand how our brains work. When we're feeling triggered, we actually go to a very primal place in ourselves, and we do not have access to the part of our brain that makes good decisions, or the part of our brain that remembers why we shouldn't do these things. We need to be teaching our children how their brains and bodies work, how to regulate their emotions, so that they can take some of the control on the outcomes. But we also need to flood our schools with resources like Pathways to Peace that are there to help kids along on their journey. I don't think we do enough to empower our kids to help their peers. They're our first line of defense. They care about their friends. They don't want them to get in trouble. And this could be getting involved in crime and violence, but this could also be self-harm, eating disorders, abuse. How do we help kids help their peers? What numbers did they call that aren't police, that aren't their teachers? Because I know that they're not going to trust that resource. Being a teacher, what is their direct access to Pathways to Peace, or the sexual health hotlines, so that they can help their friends avoid risky behaviors. I appreciate all of the work that's been put into this plan and Director Shepard's focus on training in-house staff and de-escalation and violence prevention and restorative practices. But I hope that we can consider going further, if not this year, then next year, and City Council is ready to partner with you all. Thank you.
And the final speaker this evening will be Mr. Kevin Lockhart, a community member. Mr. Lockhart, you have 3 minutes.
So to people who don't know exactly what this is the district-wide safety plan. And what it does is the Board of Education Commission in the city of Rochester is what they are proposing is creating a team appointed by the Board of Education to do a few things, namely review the safety plan annually, run some safety drills, coordinate with the city and county agencies like law enforcement and the emergency services. And also, they mentioned notifying the schools as well, other schools in the district. So then it'd be like an incident of violence, for instance, would be a big, big deal. And you would go and you would tell the Central Board of Education, who would tell everybody else, which when addressing the public safety plan for this issue, because of course we don't want police in the schools. The suburbs don't have, there's 20 school districts without any police in the schools at all. So somehow all these other school districts are able to do that all across the county, have no police in the schools, have no real significant crises that's measurable throughout the years, or throughout the year, in any way comparable to the Rochester City School District, which is in shambles. And we let these crises go, and the school district is proposing a plan for the safety of the students. First of all, they should be the last people qualified to be putting together any safety
Mr.
plan,
Lockhart,
anything
I'm
at
going
all,
to shut
period.
off,
3
shut
minutes.
off the mic. Shut off the mic.
Hey, you do not interrupt until my
Shut
3
off
minutes
the
are
mic.
over.
Shut off the mic.
You have some
This has got to
respect
do
for
with the
taxpayers.
district plan. District plan. The district plan.
The taxpayers, you absolute clowns.
No, thank you.
President Elliott, there are no other speakers for
All
this
right,
evening's
thank you.
hearing.
There being no further business. The time is now 5:46. The hearing is now adjourned. Thank you.
General public and everyone in listening ears. This is the Equity and Student Achievement Committee meeting of the whole. Today is Tuesday, August 13th, and we will get started with this particular meeting. Do I need to entertain a motion to open the meeting? Has it been that long? Why am I making things up? Why don't we start with our board goals? I would like to remind everyone that our 2023 through 2028 board goals are as such. Number one, increase the percentage of students in grades 3 through 8 who are proficient on the New York State ELA assessment from 16% in September 2023, when these goals were created, to 40% in June 2028. Number two, all students reading by third grade. Increase the percentage of students proficient on the third grade New York State ELA from 15% in September 2023 to 50% in June 2028. Number three, increase the percentage of students in grades 3 through 8 who are proficient on the New York State Math Assessment from 14% in September 2023 to 40% by June 2028. And lastly, but certainly not least, number four, increase the number of students earning 5 or more credits in ninth grade from 70% in September 2023 to 90% by June 2028. I do want to recognize that any form of goal achievement is made in increments. If we could hop right to 100%, we certainly would. But right now, we are trying to come up with smart goals that are achievable and attainable for the students and those who need to execute the goals. We will continue to revisit these goals. I hope that this was helpful. Moving forward in the agenda, we do not have speakers on the list for tonight, and I would like to entertain a motion to accept the meetings from the June 11th, 2024 ESA Committee of the Whole.
Motion.
Motion by Vice President LeBron, seconded by Commissioner Griffin. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. As we begin this year and moving into the 24-25 school year, I do want to touch on the ESA committee and its purpose and what we are committed to. And the ESA committee is committed to promoting and advancing student success. And it probably should end there, but it doesn't. Let's give you some more information. We want to promote student success by analyzing and enhancing student achievement through the review of quarterly academic reports, evaluating policies and administrative recommendations that directly impact student outcomes, reviewing program evaluations to ensure that funded initiatives effectively contribute to student achievement, and advocating for the replication of successful programs. Providing the board with informed recommendations on resolutions, policies, and programs related to student achievement. Ensuring the implementation of board-approved policies and programs through consistent follow-up and monitoring progress toward the achievement of the board's annual goals. To achieve these objectives, the committee will receive information through a mix of presentations and reports as outlined in the attached work plan. I look forward to leading this essential component of the board's work. And the work plan, again, is attached for your review and consideration. At this time, we are going to move forward in the agenda. And I'm going to, are we all set? Okay. We're going to move forward in the agenda, and we're going to look at some end of the year data. This is part one, equity and student achievement. We're going to have Chief Lamort, our Chief Academic Officer, Steve Lamort, come on up and present this information. Thank you.
Better now, yes?
Yes, and
Okay.
just project a
Good
little
evening,
bit.
everyone. President Elliott, Vice President LeBron, Commissioner Chair Simmons, Superintendent, Board of Education, State Monitors, Superintendent's Cabinet, audience, small audience here, but audience at home as well. Good evening. My name is Steve Lamort, and I'm our district's Chief Academic Officer. Here tonight to talk with you a little bit about some end-of-year assessment data from the 23-24 school year. At the ESA committee, thanks so much. We always like to begin presentations here from teaching and learning with a focus on the instructional core. And when we talk about the instructional core, we know that the only way we're going to make any gains in our district in terms of student achievement is to aim our focus directly on the classroom. The interactions between students, educators, and the content to be taught. Now, the word assessment does not appear in this graphic per se, but assessment is all around, right? What we call assessment is not just a single test or a single event, but it's a process we use to collect evidence to see whether or not what we are doing is, in fact, making impacts to the instructional core in positive or negative ways. Right? The assessment data we're going to talk about, or I'm going to present to you tonight, are from two different sources. The title of this slide talks about balanced assessment, and when we say balanced assessment, we mean we should, a healthy balance in terms of assessment means different kinds of assessments that tell us different kinds of things. So two pieces of our balanced assessment system that we'll talk about today are iReady data and data from common assessments that we have, all aimed at K through 8 reading or ELA and math tonight. iReady and our common assessments are both similar in that we administer them 3 times throughout the year. Sometimes on reports you guys might see BOY, MOY, or EOY, meaning beginning of year, middle of year, and end of year assessments. iReady is a tool that we purchase from a vendor, or a standardized assessment that tests a whole bunch of different standards. Kind of like when we're talking about the New York State assessments in math or ELA at the end of the year that test a wide variety of assessments. That's what iReady does. Our common assessments are things that we make in-house, and we ask teachers to administer it, again, 3 times a year. And they don't cover, these common assessments are not all of the standards in ELA or in math, but they're targeted to be the standards that are most recently taught in the curriculum, right? So when we were in school, I'm so sure most folks remember taking a test at the end of a unit, right, to see what you've learned in that unit. That's what common assessments are more like. Right, so both iReady and common assessments give us information and evidence about student achievement in a single point of time, right? Like, what do students know and are able to do right here, right now? iReady, because it tests a wide variety of standards, has the advantage of giving us more information. It also helps us see growth over time. Where a common assessment or a test or at the end of a unit just tells you about those standards or those skills from that particular unit or particular point of the curriculum, iReady is able to show us growth over time. Right. Thanks, Deshaun. So I'm gonna go through these next 3 slides relatively slowly, and then the next 3 after that are going to be pretty similar. All of these having to do with iReady. We're going to start with math. Right. So the slides you're looking at right now in the associated graphs show iReady placement of students in the beginning of last year, fall of 2023, so September, October time, and their achievement at the end of last year, right? So in June or the spring of 2024. So when you're looking at this, what you'll see is at the very top, an increase in green, right? So we grew 16 percentage points in terms of the number of students that were proficient at the end of the year last year, as compared to the beginning of the year last year. What you'll also see, the negative 19 at the bottom, is that while we increased the green, right, in terms of student growth, we also reduced the number of students that were scoring far below grade level, right? So we're increasing the green and decreasing the red, which is the right pattern and trend, that we'd want to see. The next slide shows the same information, fall, the beginning of last year versus spring, the end of last year, but broken down by grade level. So you'll see, again, the same pattern or trend of increases in green and decreases in red. But you'll also see, some pretty concerning things. I think, growth is always good, but we're not seeing as much growth as we want, right? We're not seeing it as intense or as quick as we would like it to be. And I think you'll also notice right away that you'll see the green decreases over the grade levels, right? So there's a lot less growth in the green in particularly 7th and 8th grade, than there is in the rest of the grades as we go. As we analyze that data and we look at it, we think about potential, reasons and actions that we should be taking, as a result. One thing to think about in 7th and 8th grade, or about iReady. iReady is an assessment tool, but it also provides a tool that we call personalized instruction. So when a student takes the exam or takes the diagnostic, as we would say, the program creates a personalized path of instruction for students to work on individually on their own. So if you hear something about a student being on iReady or in front of a computer, they're not taking the test all year long, all the time, but they're on their personalized instruction path. And so what we find is that students who spend enough time on that personalized instruction path, the magic time is somewhere between 30 to 45 minutes a week, their scores increase. When we're looking at these scores and then comparing it to the number of minutes, the average time students are spending on personalized instruction, we see a real dip in 7th and 8th grade, right? So while other grades that are, were on average spending as much time on personalized instruction, 7th and 8th graders definitely are not, right? It's something for us to go back to and think about, both in terms of administration, of the exam, in terms of administration of the diagnostic with fidelity, but also usage of that personalized instruction. This third slide, again, all math we've been talking about so far, shows the end of year proficiency levels or placements for students over the last 3 years. So we saw so this is end of year June of 2022, June 2023, and most recent June of 2024. So we'll see 2 years ago, the 6 or 13% proficiency. The next year we jumped to 20, and this last year we stayed around 20. Growth is good and green is good, but according to iReady, there was not tons of progress from June of 2023 to June of 2024 with these students. One thing to take a look at in this particular is the number of students tested, also changed from year to year. This again goes back to kind of testing with fidelity with that time. So we've added, since last year's June results, we've added 1,000 more students. So that's good in that we're making sure more students are taking this assessment so we get the information that we need to respond, but that also has some effects on that data as we go. The next 3 slides are going to look almost identical to the ones that you just saw, but this is specifically for reading. So you'll see the same kinds of trends. A slight uptick in the growth in reading in this case, again, from the beginning of last year to the end of last year, fall 2023 to spring 2024. So that's 27% of students in the green. To give you a kind of numbers standpoint, it's that 17% increase, is almost 1,900 students, right? We also have a decrease in the red for reading as well. Similar to the math, we see this same information but broken down by grade level, and the same trend is existing. In this case of reading, a little higher levels of green, across the board, but the same trend in that there's less growth over time as we get up into the 7th and 8th grade level for, again, some of the same reasons that we were talking about for math.
I think.
Same graph or same charts as we saw for math over the last 3 years of Junes. Slight difference from last June to this June in terms of reading, but just a point up as compared, right? Reducing the red and increasing the green, but we know not as fast as we want and not as much as we want. It's not uncommon, when we're talking about change, and Commissioner Simmons, talked about this in the beginning of her opening for the committee as well. It's not unheard of, it's standard when we're talking about change and the change of curve to see an immediate uptick and then a steady, right, almost flat line for a little bit as we do smaller incremental increases over time. And that's what I think you're seeing in these 2 graphs as well, right? An immediate jump in some cases and then more incremental as we go. Switching gears in terms of the assessment tool itself, whereas we were looking at iReady for growth over time, these common assessments are standalone assessments that are given, again, 3 times a year, but intended to measure particular standards across the curriculum. So these don't show growth in the same way, but essentially we would want every common assessment for 100% of kids to be proficient on every single common assessment, right? Because this is essentially, again, that end of unit test to see if kids got what we wanted them to get, if they're skilled at what we want them to be skilled at, and this leaves a very harsh, right, reminder that what we are doing is not meeting the needs of all of our students yet, right? This shows, again, similar as the other slides, the last 3 years worth of common assessment data, but this is just proficiency, right? And the shading green here was just to indicate some changes, right, from year to year in terms of that end of year proficiency, just to give you an idea for what that looks like. Another common problem that you'll see in this English language arts, as well as the next slide in math, is that end of year time, right? A real dip in that end of year performance. Anecdotally, something that we observe, kind of pretty frequently, keep in mind that this end of year assessment is end of year after all of those New York State tests and assessments. So when you're spending April and May taking the fifth grade science, taking the whatever grade level you are in for math and ELA, these end of year assessments come at the end of that. So anecdotally, we're looking at trying to triangulate this also with our observations of classrooms and the type of instruction that is happening, at this time, to make some conclusions about why there are such dips in this end of year time. Similar to iReady, the ELA and the math common assessment patterns also look pretty similar, across that. Again, telling us that there's things about assessment integrity, right, and administration that we have to pay attention to. As part of this conversation, we also wanted to bring attention to a few schools and a few practices that have shown really, really successful. The data that we're looking at is pretty sobering. And again, if we're going back to looking at assessment as evidence for what the impact we are or we are not having, we have to keep that in mind of what is and what is not working. So the next two slides just give you a bit of a highlight of two places. One, on a school-wide level, School 46, previously Charles Carroll, now renamed Austin Stewart, really makes it their full intention to use this assessment data as best they can to change what they do real time, to adapt to and to respond to student need. So they look at iReady and they make that a regular part of their grade level team meetings, their PLCs or grade level teams, analyze that data, think about what it is that they should be doing differently as both a grade level team and as individual teachers, and bring that all the way down to the student and the parent level. So it's not just teachers using this data, but teachers working with students to have data chats about setting their own personalized goals to really make students leaders of their own learning so they can own this and see how and see progress in those ways. And so School 46 has the highest number of students who met or exceeded their annual growth in iReady as a school building, right? So in reading, 27% increase across the year, and in math, 30% increase. To zoom into a particular classroom level, we're gonna head over to Frank Fowler Dow, School 52, and Miss Dixon is a third grade teacher there. 100% of Miss Dixon's class met their growth goals this year, and 71% of them, almost 3/4, exceeded those goals and met their stretch goals, right? Absolutely. And so when we look to her and to her practice and the things that we want to replicate, we see the same things, right? Constant and consistent use of this data, first off, making sure diagnostic administration protocols are there, right? Taking this assessment seriously, talking about it with students. This isn't a stressor, right? This isn't a high stakes thing, but this is just something we do to gather information about how best I can serve you, right? And then from there, analyzing that data both individually with colleagues, talking with students about it, talking with families about it, and making sure those personalized instruction expectations we were talking about are met across the year. And that's how we see major progress. So to summarize a few key points about this data, we continue to see growth throughout the year, right? Like the increase in green is always good. And we are engaging more students in the assessment as we go. So again, the more students we engage, the more data we have and the better we can use it. And we know that looking at this data and using it, right, to change our instruction has direct positive impacts, right, on student achievement. So in terms of moving forward with growth and systematizing some practices across the district, we continue to struggle with proficiency. Right? That's a very real thing that we have to tackle head on, and we have to do more and better about. We have to continue to get all students to utilize that personalized instruction, not just to take iReady as the test, but to use that personalized instruction well, and to ensure that we have system-wide practices around using data for instruction. Because it makes little sense to give a test or to give an assessment if we're not going to do anything with that information. And so while lots of schools have their own practices and protocols, we don't necessarily have a system-wide approach, and that's part of what we'll be working on this year. To talk a few kind of more specific things that we have working on right now and or will be working on in the future. As a board, you guys approved some new curricular pieces that we'll be implementing this year. Specifically in K2, we have a new foundational skills literacy curriculum. So we expect that the implementation of that will help increase student growth and student achievement over the time. We also have new curriculum for language arts in the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade level. I think this one is particularly important, going back to what we were looking at in that data about the really decreased amounts of growth in 7th and 8th grade as compared to some of the other grades. This curriculum is engaging, it is relevant, it is real life for students, so we're really excited about getting kids excited, right, to learn, to read, and to be a part of that curriculum. Looking forward to the future, not this September, but next September, we'll start this year a selection process and an RFP for a new K-5 math curriculum. We've been using the same math curriculum for quite a while now. We make incremental improvements to that curriculum every year as well through our internal work, but it's due for a refresh, so we'll be beginning that this year. I've talked with you all before about letters training and science of reading. We're in a really good place in terms of the number of teachers that have gone through this training. We'll work to continue as teachers change grade level, as we hire new staff to make sure that they're introduced and inducted into this work, and also looking to shift focus into math training as well. How we talk about the science of reading and letters training, there's a similar type of work for math and conceptual understanding around math that we call I Make It, or I shouldn't say we call it. Somebody else calls it I Make It, right? And we implement it. And so we're going to continue working on that letters, but now shift focus to get more teachers to be engaged in that I Make It training. Thinking about that data-driven pieces that we were talking about, we're working to make sure that individual and group meetings with school leaders happen on a regular basis. For the first time last year, we worked a little bit more heavily with iReady to get one of their consultants to help, and she'll be on with us almost full-time next year, not just to have large group meetings and help us with data analysis, but be in buildings with principals to review their data individually with them, then follow that up with grade level teams and teachers right then and there to help that data-driven instruction piece happen that we saw had such great positive effects at 46 and 52. Monthly professional learning for interventionist reading teachers and coaches, integration of this data work into coaching cycles, and as I mentioned before, the creation of a district-wide toolkit, right, for what to do with this data and the best ways to use it to impact student achievement. Right? There should just be a process, right? We give these assessments 3 times a year. The results of those assessments, they take a little while for us to compile as a district, right, to see the whole picture, but they're available to teachers almost immediately after students take it, right? So as soon as students take it, what should I do with it, right? How should I talk with kids about it? What should I do as a teacher? What should we do as a principal level? What should we do as the chief academic officer, as the school chiefs, and as the superintendent? So to align that across the levels after each administration will help push us forward. And lastly, just a note about those support structures that are available directly in schools. As part of the budget that you passed last year, we have every school has an instructional coach. Every school, K-8, has an interventionist and a reading teacher as well. So there are 3 full-time people dedicated either to coaches supporting teachers to be better at what they do, and interventionists and reading teachers to directly support students, right? So those, at minimum of those 3 full-time support structure people are in each buildings, and we work with them on a regular basis to help them do this work so they can turnkey it appropriately back to the folks that they work with. I leave it to you for questions and comments.
Well, thank you, Chief Lamort, for your presentation. And I got a bit of a headache, so forgive my demeanor. And I definitely want to make sure that my understanding of incremental change and growth does not equate to my lack or sense of lack of urgency around the fact that these scores are reflected the way they are. And you all have heard me a million times talk about the fact that, outside of the numbers and the red, yellow, and green lights that we're looking at, we're actually translating and talking about real-life human beings that are going out into our community underprepared and not thriving as a result of whatever is happening, or should I say not happening, in this school district. And I want to make sure that the sense of urgency does come through. But before I go on my soapbox, what I am going to do is digress. And what we're going to do is kind of spiderweb this a little bit. I'm going to start in the middle with President Elliott, and we're going to move down. I'm going to give my last instructions. And also, I'm going to ask that we keep it to about 2 questions. And if there's a third burning, yearning question that we need to present, that we make sure that gets into the board question log. But I want to at least allow that. President Elliott, you have the mic.
Thank you, Chairwoman Simmons. So, Steve, I spoke with the superintendent today about this. I'm on page 5 of the document. And so if we look at K and first grade, even third grade, but particularly K, they come in on target, right? They come in, well, let me just back up. They don't have any risk, because I misunderstood the yellow. But still, they're only 1 grade level below. But as they move into the district, they come to more than 3 grade levels below. What is it that we can determine that goes on in K, that once they move from K, the 2 grades below? Because it seems to me, here's the thing, when you look at first grade and they move from kindergarten, how do they become 2 grades below? I don't. They haven't been in school but one year. That doesn't make sense to me. So somehow we've got to find out what's going on in kindergarten that we could translate, whether that's making it fun or, and I know life happens. And so as kids mature, they are more connected to what goes on in the world. But we need to look at what's happening that in the K level, although some of them are still at the 1 grade below, but then when it gets into, the higher grades, and particularly when we're talking about 8th grade, they seem to fall 2 and 3 grades below. And so I'm just saying that something that's going on in the kindergarten, we may need to try to replicate that in the other schools in some kind of way. And that's all the statement that I have, Chairperson Simmons.
Okay, thank you, President
Thank you.
Elliott. No questions from Vice President LeBron. Back on my soapbox. Yeah, and so when I look at the kindergarten and they're coming in 1 grade level, they're already at a deficit, and we recognize that lack of pediatric care, early grade assessments, and not getting some of that training even prior to getting into the school building are part of the issue. And then we take it from there. If you're already coming in 1 grade level behind, that's crazy, right? And I don't know, maybe I shouldn't use that term. That's disheartening. Maybe that's a better term to use.
Can I just ask one
Yes.
question? Are many of these kids go through our UPK programs? Because typically the UPK program have been some more of the more successful programs in the state. But it seems, so there seems to be that there may be a disconnect from what goes on in UPK and EPK, even to have them to be 1 grade behind. So that may be something, and I'll just direct that to Superintendent Strickland, that we may need to look at. So that even in kindergarten, they're not 1 grade behind. Because we've got the UPK and the EPK program that's supposed to position them for kindergarten as well as elementary school. So,
Superintendent, did you have a response for that?
Absolutely. So in kindergarten, those that you see tested in these data are a mix of students that did not actually attend UPK within the district or CBO. At times, we do see that some of those families are opting for charter. So, we don't get to necessarily see the fruits of the labor that has been put in by those district employees that do teach UPK 3 and UPK 4. So this is a mixed bag. It's some students that, start kindergarten at the first time in their careers, which, does so promise if they haven't been in a formalized learning environment. And it also are students that that were in our UPK programs. What I will say is that one of the charges that I had began is to look at the alignment of what's happening in our early learning programs and making sure that there is a connection to kinder, so that those kindergarten teachers were able to start to think about what it is that they need to fill in gaps, possibly, or also the UPK teachers would understand what they need to, what it means to be kindergarten ready. Okay.
Yeah. Now, President Elliott.
Yeah, so because if we're looking at our goal of K through 3 literacy rates, we need to be looking at the first, second, and third grade and trying to reduce those,
That is
those
correct.
colors. So I just want to say that. Thank you.
Yes,
And
and
just in-
also our CBOs are in need of resources for the assessment to identify what's happening with students there. I have gone to visit some of our CBOs, pre-K, what have you, and they're in need of support to get students placed that have special needs. You had something, and then I'm going to move on.
Oh, I was just wanted to point out kind of a nuance in the data, particularly at kindergarten, right? So when we're looking at these iReady scores in these graphs, the yellow is 1 grade level below, light red 2 grade levels below, darker red 3 grade levels below. It's not possible in the iReady system for a kindergartner to be rated or to be deemed 2 or 3 grade levels below. It's just not possible in the system. Yellow is as low as it can go. So when we're looking at that yellow, that doesn't mean that they're almost ready, right, to be in green. There's a wide variety. It's just the system can't shade them or color those scores red in this case. Now, that doesn't change the fact that of the pattern, that the longer they're with us, the wider the gap is becoming, right? So we still have to own that and take responsibility for that.
I think that's an important point to make, because in this, I'm going to stop so that I can move the conversation forward. I do want to just lastly say 2 things, which is iReady does not teach children to read. People do. Our educators do. Our families. That is how children learn to read, through people. The iReady assessment test assess. And that's, to your point, there's a loophole right there. With kindergarten, we can't even tell, you just said, how far behind they really are, because the assessment does not allow. But people with expertise and ability to understand what's happening with that child, the relationship with that child, can take that child much further. So I don't want us to be over-dependent. And so that leads me into my questions. My first question is, how are we balancing the assessment versus the instructional piece, right? How are we balancing this? Because I hear that children take this throughout the year, and we need the assessment to get an idea of what's happening. But how are we balancing their instruction time against the assessment? How are we doing that?
Yeah, we aim to minimize, assessment as much as possible, right? Like, as you said, we need more time teaching, right, with real live people with expertise and professionalism and great tools that we provide them in terms of curriculum in order to make that happen for students, right? So we look to minimize this as much as possible. That diagnostic assessment, the 3 times a year, does take, right, a 30 or 40-minute period of time, right, that's taken up. But then if we use that data to then say, where do we need to go next? And that's part of the balanced assessment system, where some of those common assessments come in, or just regular checks for understanding that teachers do naturally as part of their expertise, and other things built into our curriculum as well, like that Amplify foundational skills curriculum in K2 has a wide range of curriculum embedded assessments, and not a drop everything and take a test, right? But assessments of what kids are able to do and know right then and there, so teacher can respond real time.
Okay, and my last question, which is my second question, I did a little bit of talking, forgive me on that, is the opportunities to accelerate. right? We recognize, and both of us recognize that there are, and growth is incremental. You just can't go from 0 to 100. Sometimes you can, right? I have that ability, but, right, I'd be trying. No, but 0 to 100, you just can't do that. Ideally, it just doesn't work that way. But are there opportunities that we've identified to accelerate the learning? When we just highlighted 2 schools that are doing things really well, but then at the same token recognize that we do not have a system-wide approach to this instruction, what are we doing to accelerate that? Because based on these numbers that we're looking at, we don't have any more time.
Yes. Yeah, and so those last few slides, when we talked about making some of those things system-wide practices, is what we're doing to work to accelerate that as much as possible. So like I said, as a for instance, right, schools, there's tons of resources, there's tons of worksheets, there's tons of, things that teachers and schools can pull to help analyze their data, but there's also a lot, right? So we're working to streamline. So you give this assessment in September, October. What are the 3 things you've got to do right away? Right? And who can be there to help you, right? So the teacher is not on their own, but they have an instructional coach there to help them. They have reading and intervention teachers who are also skilled at that because we're helping them get there. And, right, other support from their principals and leaders to say, this is what we're going to do as soon as we get this data and make a plan to respond directly and specifically to students that are in front of them and what their need is.
Thank you. Commissioner Malloy.
Thank you so much for your presentation, Chief Lamort, and I wanted to say thank you also to Commissioner Simmons for, asking that last question, just about how are we scaling this district-wide, right? We look at those best practices from 46 and then certainly from 52, and how do we scale that? There are many other schools I know that they're making a lot of progress as well. Anyway, I love this tool. It's a diagnostic tool, right? It tells us where our kids are at a given grade level, and really helps to drive instruction within the classroom and personalize that instruction. So I love this tool, and I love that we're using it in this way. And I love slides 16 and 17, which really highlight how we're going about scaling that within our schools and hearing about those individual and group meetings, having teachers work together, having those coaches, because it is the humans behind all of this who are making this happen, more reading teachers. So thank you for all that. It answered my initial question, which I no longer have. So kudos for all of that. I think the first real question that I have is just where can I find school-by-school comparisons for iReady diagnostics? I'd love to see those school-by-school comparisons.
Yeah. In preview meeting on Friday, State Monitor LSA actually asked about that, and we provided those. They should be in board docs for you for this most recent year. So all of the, like what we saw on the colorful charts that we saw for 46 and 52 for each of the schools should be in board docs there for you.
Perfect.
If there's
And
further,
that's available for the public as well, correct? The school-by-school comparisons?
I believe so, but Rahima can correct me if I'm incorrect.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that. Thank you.
Yep.
And my second question or final question is when, looking at this diagnostic is fabulous, and I know we're all anxiously awaiting for state scores now from May, June, or from April through June, all of those scores that should be coming in anytime now. When can we expect those? Is that going to be at our next ESA meeting, most likely?
Yeah, not 100% sure. I just talked with our assessment folks this morning about that too. Classically, we normally get those New York State proficiency levels in August.
Yeah.
Actually, I have had vivid memories where we're normally in our leadership summit and everything kind of stops because everybody starts getting their scores. Last year, because the standards that were used for the test changed, we didn't get proficiency levels until October. So the state has not given us an official word on whether or not we could expect them closer to the August timeline that we normally do, or if we're going to have to wait longer. State ed doesn't make the cut scores for those proficiencies until way after the test administration. So we're hoping for end of August, like historically, and not October like last year.
Thank you. Yeah, and I'm particularly anxious to see how our English language learners are performing, as well as our students with disabilities as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Malloy. And from the response I heard is that it tends to range in when that information comes. But as soon as we have it, we will update.
Absolutely.
Commissioner Griffin.
Thank you, Commissioner Simmons. First I want to applaud you on the plethora of information that you provided, more so than we've done in the past in reference to the iReady information. So I appreciate that. One thing that I don't know, probably it's just me saying, it's not even a question. I believe that high scope is what is used in the CBO and the pre-K to teach the children. So I don't know if there's any type of format that could be used with our children after they come out of that, because we see that, the levels are dropping at a certain time. If we can't probably look into something like that, that may help our children so they don't fall like they have, the numbers don't fall as far as their skill sets of reading or literacy. I guess the last thing I will say is that my concern really is to primarily be focused on reading and the literacy portion of this, and the balance between them even reading a book. Do we have books in the classroom, or is it all just Chromebooks? So I think it actually relates to Commissioner Simmons' point of how much, what does the curriculum look like? How is it balanced? Um, I would like to see more books being read in schools. I know for myself, as a reading, you use your finger to point to each word, and people would make fun of that, but that was actually a good way of learning how to read. So that is one of my concerns. And do we know where we're at with our reading teachers? Because I know we were looking into that and wanted to know what dynamics where we're at, and as far as the dynamics of our reading teachers being hired to assist our children in being successful in the literacy department. But that's it.
Thanks. And yes, you're correct about, the high school curriculum is the curriculum at the pre-K level. And excuse me, Superintendent Strickland said earlier, well, we have a real goal to be looking at what that transition looks like from pre-K to K to make sure those curricula are aligned appropriately. We definitely have been moving more books, kids are never only on Chromebooks, right? The curriculum that they have for reading, right, is real, is tangible, is on paper, and they do read books. Just in last year, actually, we, particularly at the K2 level, we were able to infuse a large amount of decodable readers for teachers to use as well. And reading teacher-wise, Dr. Miller, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe all reading teachers are staffed with the exception of one. We have one school with a reading teacher vacancy right now that I know Dr. Harris Pappen was interviewing just this morning to fill that one place. So we're in a good spot in terms of reading teacher staffing for the district.
And there's just one more comment. I often do a lot of research myself in different states, and to see how we compare with our reading skills, our reading sets, and our reading standards. I do see a lot of them using more writing out things and using a lot of books, and that's a way to keep the kids engaged.
Yeah.
And writing on that. We had a chalkboard back in the days, and I think that we've gotten away from a lot of that. We have the teachers doing a lot more writing than we have the students. So I would love to see more where the teachers are engaged, the students are engaged with writing out more things, and doing those book reports that are early on, so they'll start loving reading like we all did at one point. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Griffin. We're going to move down the other way to my right, and we're going to go with Commissioner Patterson.
Thank you. Thank you for a wonderful presentation. Excuse me. As commissioners, we all pay attention to certain things. And for me, obviously, school safety would be one. And I always look forward to this iReady data because it tells us a lot. I think you yourself said that instructional data-driven, it's data-driven instruction. And that's very important to me, especially having a background in literacy. So I'm always going to kind of challenge, the administration in this area to make sure that we're moving our children forward when it comes to especially reading and math. And I don't want to be repetitive because my colleagues have said a lot of things and asked questions that I would have asked, so they're already answered. So I'm just not that repetitive type person. But for me, and if you go back to some of the board meetings when we discussed iReady, all the way back to Dr. Black, I always said that we need to concentrate earlier, like in pre-kindergarten, start there. Because as we see, when these kids are getting to kindergarten, they're still not prepared. So I understand that, from some of the conversation tonight, that that's what we're going to be doing, is really concentrating on preschool, starting there, and moving, toward kindergarten and first and second grade. Am I correct in that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
And again, let's see, what else did I have? I wrote a couple notes. I think Commissioner Malloy mentioned the comparison data. Raima, could you print that for me? Make a note. I'd like to see that data myself also, the comparison data.
That data, along with the presentation, is included in the binders that each commissioner receives.
I can't hear you, I'm sorry.
The data you're requesting, along with tonight's presentation, is included in your binders that each commissioner was given.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it. And last but not least, and I already spoke to the superintendent of pre-meeting, relative to this, so it's nothing he hasn't shared with me, but I just want to make sure that the data, especially again, iReady, because I'm very interested in that it is presented to us in a timely fashion. So I see here, beginning of year, mid-year, and end year, I know things come up, that may set it back a little bit, but if you guys can make sure that, we do receive that data in timely, so we can make decisions as, school board members or commissioners, bless you, which directions we proceed. Thank you.
Absolutely. And on the existing ESA committee schedule for the year, iReady, the beginning of year iReady data is set to come to you in November, and the middle of year in March. Excuse me, at the end of the day, I have a bad accent. I have a headache too.
All right, someone's explain that to me, either superintendent or.
So we already scheduled out when we're going to be presenting that information to the public. The information that I gave to you, once we solidify the actual testing window as being closed, we are able to codify that data together. We can get that to you, but the public will get the formalized presentation in those months that Chief Lamort mentioned.
Okay, and so just for clarification, I just want to make sure that the board, receives the information during these 3 periods.
Yes, absolutely. And
Okay.
actually, we want to get to a place where you do see some of those data earlier so that when we do come to the board meetings, you are ready to, really have a robust conversation around where there may be deficits within grade levels or, what's happening across schools, so on and so forth. And also, as you look at it, you would talk to Chairwoman Simmons around what should we be presenting out that's different next time, because we don't want to be repetitive and seeing the same thing. We want to show the community and the public different aspects of what we get from those data.
Thank you, Commissioner Patterson. And before we close out, again, thank you for your presentation. I know this is always a hot seat, especially when we're talking about things that are not reflective of what we want to see in that moment in time, right? But I do want to ask if our superintendent, state monitor, or yourself, Chief Academic Officer Lamort, have any final statements or anything you want to say around the data we just looked at, or?
Thank you, Chair Simmons. Great presentation. Thank you for sharing this information. My question is, or my comments based on President Elliott's comments about what is happening in pre-K, is to look the opposite way. What is not happening in pre-K kindergarten that, that we're not providing the teachers the time to do that vertical articulation about the curriculum, what is happening, so we can work together and improve what is happening in the classroom. That vertical articulation is very important, that provide kindergarten teachers the opportunity to talk to the first grade, to the first grade to the second grade, so they can see how they can put all the pieces together to improve student achievement.
This time, thank you very much. Before we move forward with the agenda, I do have to acknowledge that at the start of the meeting, I asked to entertain a motion for the acceptance of the minutes from June 11th, but did not recognize that the minutes were not showing attached. Thank you, Commissioner Malloy, for pointing that out. And so I would like some support or language around bringing that motion back in, or how do we do that, Council?
Did the board vote on the minutes?
Yeah, we voted, but they're not showing attached. And does that impact it?
You can just do a motion to reconsider. So enter a motion to reconsider, vote on the motion to reconsider, then you can vote on the minutes again if that's what the body would
They're
like
not
to do.
attached to, yeah.
Well, you did vote on the motion already, so you could rescind it as well.
Okay.
So if that's easier, you can just do a rescission. The board is allowed to do a motion to reconsider by the prevailing side, so if the majority voted in favor of it, then, someone from the majority can reconsider. But I think, yeah, a motion to rescind and then a revote is fine as well.
Okay.
So a motion to rescind.
So I'd like,
Are the minutes, I'm sorry, maybe I might be confused.
They haven't
The
been
minutes
added.
are not there even now. Okay. So it's a motion to rescind, my apologies.
Okay.
I thought they weren't there, but now they were.
you
but
got
they're
a
not
headache
there.
too, huh?
I got you.
Okay, no worries. So
Yep, so
I would
just
like to
a motion
entertain.
to rescind, yep.
Yes, I'd like to entertain a motion to rescind
Second.
the acceptance of the meeting. Moved by President Elliott, seconded by Commissioner Malloy. All in favor? Aye. Okay, that motion has been rescinded, and then we will follow up from there at some point. Thank you for your patience, everyone. And so next on the agenda are the summary of outcomes of our consent decree. And this is for special education. And coming to the mic is Chief Swan.
Good evening. Good evening, Chairperson Simmons, President Elliott, Vice President LeBron, and distinguished commissioners. It's my pleasure to give you an update on our special education program and how our goals and achievement tie into our current special education consent decree. I wanted to start the presentation just by anchoring the audience in our special education demographic data. So currently, we have close to 5,500 school-age students with disabilities in the school district. You can see that we have close to 500 preschool students classified, with a total of almost 6,000 students who are receiving some degree of special education support in the school district. This data is taken on Beds Day, which is always the first Wednesday of every October, and that's in alignment with New York State accountability data. We take a snapshot, we see where we're at in time. Those numbers fluctuate, of course, during the year, but they're pretty close to where we're at right now as well. We also report to the state the type of classification that our students fall under. For a child with a school-age disability, we have 13 classifications to choose from through Part 200. And we choose a classification to help us identify really the core essence of the child's level of need, because what we try to create is an individualized education program that meets that need. In our school district, I wanted to highlight, we continue to see an increase in students with the classification of autism. And that is a very unique classification. When you look at students' needs, students who are classified by autism, their needs are very individualized. Some students may be incredibly high functioning and brilliant in their academics, but requiring social and communication needs. And some students demonstrate with more significant or severe needs. So that's a broad category that I just wanted to point out. And that really drives the different type of special education programs that we're offering in the school district. We also disaggregate our demographic data by ethnicity and race. So you can see the percentages of students in that slide. And I shared with you the number of Committee on Special Education or Committee on Preschool Special Education meetings or amendments that we have held this year, close to 7,600 meetings. So again, if you think we've got close to 6,000 students, every one of those students has to minimally be met once a year to talk about their progress in their program. And of course, we have updated meetings throughout the year if students require us to look at their program throughout the academic calendar year. This is data that I found to be interesting across time. So we look at our initial Committee on Special Education meetings. These are children who we're considering classifying for the first time and the referrals that we receive. You can see this year, for example, we received around 500 initial evaluations and initial referrals. Of those initial referrals, 323 students were classified, but almost 200 were found ineligible. And I find this information interesting and something worthy of digging a little bit deeper on, because what I believe is at the root of this, my hypothesis, is that we have students who are struggling, but people don't know what to do with that, and the level of support that we need to put in place before special education. The good news is, and you know this as board members, we have really been focusing on our MTSS, or our multi-tiered system of support, and starting to develop that. So my hope is, as we develop in the school district a toolbox of strategies and supports for students, we're going to see that students who are referred to the Committee on Special Education, a higher percentage would be classified, because then we are really identifying the right need. Right now, I believe that 200 students that we found ineligible, we still need to really think mindfully about what supports they're going to be receiving outside of special education. I included data for you in regards to the percentage of students with disabilities in each of the buildings. This slide represents the percentage of students at the elementary level. And the next slide represents the percentage of students with disabilities at the secondary level. In looking at our reconfiguration, one of our main goals this year was to not only accommodate for the reconfiguration, but really to look across each of the zones and project what students needed in terms of the special education programming, and make sure that we offered a variety of different supports and programs for students in each of their zones. So this year we had a number of different goals that we were working on, stemming from really looking at our processes and procedures and things that we needed to change, provided a host of professional development activities. We worked very closely with the State Education Department and partnered with them on a few key initiatives. One in regards to our literacy instruction, particularly at the elementary level. behavioral interventions, transition support, and our case management. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about each of those areas, our partnership with state ed, and our accomplishments in those areas. In addition to those instructional focus areas, of course, we continue to work collaboratively with our Medicaid office and the development of our special education continuum and placement, as well as responding to any corrective action plans from the state ed department. So, this year, as I had alluded to, we worked very closely with state ed on a number of initiatives, and we had certain schools that were identified for targeted support based on the 2022-23 accountability data. If you wouldn't mind forwarding. So our work, again, really focused in the area of behavior and behavioral support, transition support for our students who are secondary students who are approaching college or post-secondary options, literacy performance, and looking at disproportionality classification rates. The schools identified, we do not get to pick the schools. Again, that's based on accountability data, but we do work with the state and say, okay, if these are the schools that we're working with, what might be already their improvement plan, and how do we support the efforts that are already in place within those schools? So let's look at behavior. Our focus area schools were 358, Monroe Lower, and North Star at the time. And what we needed to work on was really creating data-based teams to look at data. We talked earlier, Steve talked earlier about the whole concept of data-informed decision-making. And we were really looking at creating data teams that would look specifically at suspension data for students with disabilities who were in specialized special class settings. We had a number of different goals around this area. We had a systems goal, a practice goal, and a student goal, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. So first, the system goal was to develop these district-based level teams that would look at data, have data protocols, and really create a reentry process for students who may have been suspended. We had a practice goal that drills down at the teacher level and really worked with classroom staff to implement specific behavioral strategies to support students in their behavioral needs and what was causing students to be suspended from school. And then the student outcome goal was to reduce the amount of suspensions from the prior year to this year, and thus showing the support that we were providing around behavioral needs was actually improving. So our system goal, we actually exceeded our goal. We worked with state ed to identify the buildings that had to have district teams developed. All of the buildings had district teams develop data protocols and practices in place. Our practice goal, so teachers really utilizing particular strategies around behavioral needs, that's an area that we didn't quite meet. Again, that has to do with doing functional behavior assessments, creating behavioral implementation plans, and then coming back and really monitoring those behaviors. So that will continue to be a practice goal this year. However, at the student level goal, we exceeded that. We had a significant reduction in students who were suspended. I believe that this is not only the work that we've done with state ed, but this was a collective effort of the whole district, from the superintendent, the deputy superintendents, the continuous conversations we've had with building principals and administrators, as well as teachers. So that's a collective effort and a collective achievement. We had a number of actions around this goal, as I already shared, really thinking about and designing district-level implementation teams, the constant professional development and working with state ed in regards to these behavioral needs, the support of our behavioral team pushing into classrooms and working directly with teachers, the training on functional behavior assessments and behavioral plans, and all of that work will continue. So again, we targeted a small number of schools, and the idea is to develop sound practices that then grow and turn key to the rest of our buildings. Our next area of focus was on transition and transitioning planning for students with disabilities as they get ready to graduate or move to post-secondary goals. So our focus areas, excuse me, that print is a little bit small for me. Our focus buildings were Northeast College Prep, Edison, and Wilson Commencement, again, and that was based on accountability data. And our goal was really to develop an in-depth transition process. So we worked and we piloted in those buildings to then turnkey the process and the expectation to all of the other buildings. Our systems goal in this area was to ensure that in-depth transition planning and conversations were happening at our Committee on Special Education meetings. So our goal was that 90% of the annual review CSE meetings would use a transition conversation protocol to make sure, that those rich transition conversations were being had at the CSE meeting. You can see from our data that we exceeded that. All of our buildings, our targeted buildings, successfully utilized this conversation protocol. We received great feedback on it, and we'll continue to move that forward throughout the system. Our student goal was to ensure that 80% of the students in this particular cohort were in attendance for their annual review and were able to speak to their transition goals. Again, we really came close to 100%, which would be exceeding our goal. And again, this is the importance of modeling and encouraging students to have voice. Their IEP is their individualized education program, and particularly at the secondary level, we want students to be at their Committee on Special Education meetings, to have voice in their program, and to really project what they need to be able to move forward. And then our practice goal, if you won't mind forwarding, again, is that practice goal targets at the teacher level. And so our goal was that 75% of students with disabilities in the cohort that I talked to would have been provided with information around Access VR and other community resources for their transition planning. So we look to monitor that. We look to see what type of resources are being shared with our students for transition programming. So again, a number of different action steps targeted for this particular goal. Some had to do just with some compliance and procedural actions that we've taken in the Office of Special Education, making sure that our annual review letters and parent letters and guides focus in this area. We did quite a bit of training on graduation requirements. We partnered with counselors, we've trained administrators, really looking at transcripts and all of the different graduation pathways for students with disabilities. We've provided professional development on job coaching to our associate directors and our teaching assistants. Again, we presented to our families of CPAC on graduation pathways and adult supports. We've really taken an active step with our CPAC families to provide professional learning on a monthly basis, and this was one area that was really well received. In addition, not only do we continue to network and develop our external partnerships with Access VR or the Office of People with Disabilities, we want to make sure that we're developing those connections with our community partners so our families have access to resources. The next support plan in partnership with State Ed came in the area of literacy and increasing student proficiency in the area of literacy. As you know, this is our top goal for our school district, but it's also the top goal in our special education consent decree and our academic plan. If you want my... So the schools that were identified for literacy focus were 7, 12, 16, 35, 39, 50, 52, and 54. And our goal was to increase the foundational literacy skills for students with disabilities in the designated schools. Chief Lamort just did an overall presentation on literacy achievement, but for students with disabilities, as you know, that gap is even more significant, and the urgency is more significant. We have about 3 to 5% of our students with disabilities meeting proficiency at the 3-8 level in ELA. We must have urgency around this. Our students need to know how to read and to write and communicate. And I cannot thank the board enough for your commitment. We talked earlier about preschool with the additional classrooms in support of our preschool special education classrooms. When we think about students who are coming into our school district and we see hundreds of students every year with the classification of autism growing, I can't express my gratitude to the commitment of providing early intervention and helping students close that gap when they are young. And so we're really looking forward. We had a preschool retreat this summer focusing on literacy and early learning, and we are committed to high instructional practices from the earliest of grade levels. So thank you for your commitment to that. So back to the literacy goal. Our student goal was that students with disabilities in our 3-6 integrated consultant teacher classes, special classes, and resources would show a 5% increase in their foundational literacy skills. We chose a Tier 3 program called Really Great Reading last year. We've trained all of our special education staff on that. So it's really, this year was the implementation and the professional learning with Really Great Reading to help shore up foundational skills for students with disabilities. You will see that, oh, I'm sorry, could you just go back one? You'll see that we reached our goal, that 50% of that cohort, all of those students in grades 3 through 8, showed at least a 5% increase in their foundational skill. I'm thrilled that we reached the goal, but I want to be at 100%. I want to see that incremental growth, and I have significant urgency around that. So you'll continue to hear lots of efforts in this area. I did share, just a pocket, a bright spot, but really some of the anecdotal data that we got from teachers was that the really great reading program, we're starting to see significant student growth and celebration with that. And so I'm excited that we'll continue to move into year 2 of implementation, and the more we have training and the more that we've got these data protocols in place, that we're talking about how are students learning, what do we need to do and adjust our instruction. We've got a good foundation to build upon. So our practice goal in the area of literacy so again, that's at the teacher level, was a commitment that all of our teachers would complete units 1 through 5 in the program and the training modules. We reached and slightly exceeded our goal by, we hit the 75% mark, and our system goal was to make sure that we established processes, that we had teacher training, monthly data meetings, communication for implementation. So all of those processes to put in place for data-driven instructional practices. And I apologize, the highlight I think came off of that, but we exceeded that. We were at 100% for our systems goal. Just some information from some of our building administrators who also voiced appreciation and saw growth with this program and the efforts around that. And the program is a good program, but I want to emphasize there's no magic program. And that's why the systems goal is important. The systems goal of coming together, building in data protocols, having instructional conversations, adapting what we're doing, and then coming back to the table in a short amount of time. That reiterative cycle is what allows us to develop strong instructional practices and put the best type of teaching that we can in front of our children. So again, some of the work that we did, a lot of training has gone forth, not only through the Office of Special Education, but the Office of Teaching and Learning on training on the science of reading. We conducted training on explicit instruction and what students with disabilities need in terms of literacy instruction, how to progress monitor, how to use assessment data, both formative and summative assessment data to shape your instructional practices. We've shared a lot of information with our associate directors, building administrators, but again, also with CPAC, because I believe it was you, Commissioner Simmons, who also said, parents are some of the earliest teachers of reading, and we've got to partner with our parents so they know what we're trying to accomplish in school and the techniques and the work that we're doing, and they can partner with us, and we can also support their efforts at home. We continue to provide embedded professional learning with teachers. The best type of professional learning is job-embedded professional learning. The sit and get, it doesn't produce the results that we want, but when we're working shoulder by shoulder with teachers and supporting teachers and administrators in the moment, research has proven that's the best type of professional learning. And so again, we saw growth in our students' reading, building administrators really engaged and supporting our efforts in data review. This is not just the work, obviously, of the Office of Special Education. We could only work through our building administrators, and they've been wonderful partners in our work. A continued focus on ELA, our multi-tiered system of support, going into classrooms, looking at instruction, This is one of our goals for next year, to really have our associate directors be learning and in classrooms and giving feedback on learning and instructional practices. And so our integration with our consent decree. Oh, thank you. We're making good progress with our consent decree, and we're looking for to have conversations with EJC around possible disengagement in some of the areas. We've made progress with our continuum of service, and so we've reduced drastically the amount of time students have to move between buildings. We're very proud of the transition work that I just shared with you. We have a high percentage of students with disabilities have legally compliant transition plans. We required 0 variances from the state of New York this year in regards to our continuum of service. We have increased the amount of related service providers reporting all of their services in our frontline system. We've increased the amount of parents attending their annual reviews. We've increased the amount of special education bilingual teachers and therefore our offerings of our program. And we've increased the amount of mandated special education training and professional learning this year. We're really proud of those accomplishments, and we hope to continue to engage with EJC. So if that work continues, it allows us to get more targeted. It allows us to focus on the ELA, the math achievement, which is what we're really all here for, to have our kids learn and give them educational opportunities that they deserve. We're also anticipating progress in our goal 3, which is suspension work, our long-term suspensions. And again, I talked to you about the behavioral work that we've done with state ed. And we have reduced the number of overdue meetings. So these are all areas of growth and accomplishments that our office is proud of. Moving forward, we still have significant challenges, and I talked about that. It's really about eliminating that gap on student learning, particularly in the areas of ELA and math. We know as educators there are particular milestones and targets that we have. For example, all students reading by grade 3, students high in proficiency by grade 6 in math. 9th grade students having at least 5 credits and preferably more. When we look at that graduation rate, that's a systems goal. It just doesn't happen at the secondary level. So we've got to make sure that we're meeting these milestones across time in order to get that graduation rate up, and to make sure that we're having those meaningful transition conversations so students have a voice in what their long-term goal is going to be after graduation. We're looking very closely at what we call LRE, or least restricted environment. Oh no, I'm sorry, if you could go back. Thank you. Where we're placing students and how do we give them the opportunity to be included to the greatest extent possible that's appropriate for them, so they have opportunities to experience the rigor of instruction in a general education classroom setting. So I had shared, we had a preschool retreat this summer. And one of the questions that I asked our staff is, why can't students with significant disabilities be included in general education kindergarten classrooms? What would we need to be doing differently to give students that opportunity, to help teachers feel prepared? It's done well elsewhere. It gives students an opportunity, again, to have the rigor of that general education program. So we're starting to challenge our mindsets, our belief systems, to do more and to expand opportunities for students with disabilities. We're looking to increase the amount of delivered related services, so that's always difficult with whether it's staff is absent or students are missing, but we need to increase the amount of delivered related services. Working very closely with the Office of Human Capital and ensuring that certified teachers are in our classrooms, and looking at the racial disparity of newly classified students. So those continue to be our challenges and our significant goal areas moving into the 24-25 school year. So our next steps, when we do receive our 3-8 assessment data, when we have our finalized Regents data for our summer work with students, we'll compile that and complete the annual report with all of the data points towards all of the goals of the consent decree. In the next week, I have a collaborative meeting set up with the State Education Department and our Regional Office of Special Education, because what I want to advocate for is support from the state that is telling us what schools we have to focus areas on. We know what schools we need to focus on. We know the work that needs to be done. And what I want to do is I want to partner with the state to say, this is what we need. This is where we think your partnership, our partnership will be best suited and support of our building efforts, and tie that work into the consent decree, the academic plan, the corrective action plans. Sometimes when you have all of these competing initiatives, the bandwidth gets thin. And I want to work with state ed to say we need to be focused. We need to really get focused if our true goal is to increase ELA and math and learning in our school district for our students. So that meeting is in the next week. And then again, continuing our work with Empire Justice Center to discuss the renegotiation or the discontinuation of certain goals that we feel that we've achieved and continue to achieve now for a number of years. And I welcome any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Chief Swan. So we're gonna bullet over to the far left. I'm gonna go there and then go right. So Commissioner Patterson, I'm gonna start with you if you have any questions.
I don't have any questions for you, but wonderful presentation, so thank you for the information.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Santiago, any questions?
Just a quick question to our state monitor, Alisea. Just want to hear your thoughts. You know, you're on the state side, so I heard a lot of references to the state, so I want to hear your thoughts on the progress and the steps moving forward.
First, great presentation, Chief.
Thank you.
You have provided a lot of details. A lot of work is taking place in the district. They're looking at data. They're having ongoing communication. So I feel comfortable that the district is making progress in this area and that they are addressing the consent decree. As the Chief Swan said, I also encourage them to go back because there are some things that the district has no control over. And those are things that we need to bring to the attention of the state and to be given the opportunity to address those areas. But overall, great job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Santiago. Thank you, State Monitor, for your response. President Elliott.
Thank you. So on page 2, intellectual disability, can you define what intellectual disability is?
Those are students that present with more moderate to severe cognitive delays.
Okay, so I bring that up because when we looked at the iReady data, and I guess the question also is in terms of the K and 1 grades, you know, how many students from there are in special ed, but I'm wondering if the fact that we're seeing, you know, our students 2 and 3 grades behind, if at some point that our students not being taught well is in some way they've been now classified as intellectual disabled. Can you respond to that?
Yes. So when students are younger, so in the younger grades, you may see some of those lower scores could very well be impacted by students who are intellectually disabled. In the district, there's a pathway of grade level curriculum. And then for those students who are more severely disabled, we have an alternative assessment curriculum. But we don't make that determination until students are in their upper elementary, intermediate levels. And we don't do that purposefully because we really want to give children time to learn, have intervention, receive special education supports before jumping to that type of classification. Because when students are alternatively assessed, they're ungraded, and they most likely will not get a diploma. And so we hold out on that decision until their later years. So again, yes, you could have students then who are presenting as delayed that might be in that data, President Elliott.
Let me ask it another way, because what has happened historically is that when students have not been taught, they put them in special ed. And so that's what I guess I'm trying to get to, that we're not having that the students who are actually intellectually disabled really have a special, an issue.
Yes.
And that's been defined.
That
Not
has been
because that
defined.
we have systems that have not educated our students. And then those red, light red and dark red, where our students are 2 and 3 grades behind, I guess I just want to make sure that we're distinguishing between those students where we have failed our students who don't have a disability versus the one who have disabilities. And all of those students who have disabilities are not a part of that, you know, light red and dark red. But I wanted to just be clear about that we were distinguishing actually those who had a diagnosis versus those that we have just not done well in terms of providing them with a quality
That's
education.
correct.
All right.
Thank you, President Elliott. Vice President LeBron.
There we go. Thank you. I just, 2 comments. One, I want to just uplift and highlight the Medicaid component piece. And you'll hear more next week at the Finance Committee, but I do think we're going to end up on finance having some intersection with some of the goals that we're setting, particularly around this area. And it is my hope and goal that some of the discussions and decisions that are made, you know, through that avenue ends up having positive additional benefits for students in this area. So I just want to uplift that. And 2, I continue to personally struggle with the interactions families have with special education. And I get and want to uplift that a lot of work, that this is a big, big lift and that a lot of work has gone into it. But, I provide crisis services to families at the Children's Library as well, and interface with lots of families who are coming there. And in addition, my own grandchildren, right, are in this district, and I've talked about this even last year, how long it took for my daughter to sort of push and advocate and navigate our own internal systems, even with her, my grandson having his grandmother be the vice president of the school board and still not being able to get the classification for the services that he needed. It took us an entire year from pre-K, right, because this was my goal. And we still, I personally in this moment, as we are transitioning into a new school, because his school was closed, right, so he's also impacted by some of these decisions. I still don't know what that IEP is going to look like for him. My daughter doesn't have an idea of what the services are going to be. And here we are, right? And so I don't want any special privileges for him, but this is the shared experiences of many families in this district who won't be able to share that experience or story tonight. And so I just want to uplift that yes, kudos to all of the hard work. And I want to acknowledge again that I know that there is a lot of movement and positive changes happening in special ed, but that we could still continue to have the real daily struggle for families just trying to navigate and get those IEP services in place and get them going. And on our staff side, let me uplift that piece very quickly and I'll wrap up. For the staff, it also is a burden when they themselves can clearly see that there's a classification need here and they're sending emails and all they can do is continue to communicate back with the parents while they're trying to manage multiple children. So I just want to uplift that for them, and I hope that there are some additional supports and thoughts and considerations to how we handle those circumstances when we have had children who need a classification, need an IEP, and are going almost 8 months out of the entire school year without getting any support or services, and how challenging that is for our staff and the other students who are there who are also trying to focus and not understand fully what's going on around them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vice President LeBron. To that point, thank you again for your presentation. This is heavy, right? Special education has always been heavy, particularly in this district. I guess my question for you is, and it may be a little weedy, so we'll figure that out after I ask it. Because I'm thinking about, to the point that the Medicaid and the classification, the meetings that have to get followed up on, the lack of alignment with the consent decree, all of these things, who do we have in place? Well, I'm not asking for like names, but I'm saying, do we have enough? Because I know sometimes we're like, oh, we got so many people at central office. And in some cases, I would have to say that is true, right? And in some cases, it's necessary. And unless you understand how compounded these systems are, you can try to cut some costs here, but you're saving money and costing yourself more money in the long run. So as far as like placement and our children, to Vice President just spoke about it, parents advocating to get their children the services they believe they need, the assessments, whatever. What is going on? Do we have the manpower, I guess is where I'm trying to go with that. I thought at one point there was like it was a dedicated position to overseeing some of these core pieces, and now my understanding is it could maybe be dispersed among people. Is that tell me?
So my first priority coming into the school district and my advocacy point was around preschool. And so we talked about that, and you had, as a board, really honored that commitment. There are organizational recommendations that I will be making. I meet with Deputy Turner once a month. We've talked about those organizational recommendations, some of them. I do believe we need to look a little bit more closely, for example, at our data teams and some of our supports around these initiatives. I can't emphasize how time intensive the consent decree, for example, is. Mm-hmm. And, we're really getting into the consent decree now, so it's almost taking a step back, because I don't think anyone could have anticipated how intense it is to say this is what the work really looks like and the need really looks like, but it is intensive. Mm-hmm. And again, that was my when I shared, like, the bandwidth only gets so small, it's why I'm meeting with state ed. Like, state ed can't have their initiatives, and then we've got a consent decree and an academic plan and a strategic plan and compliance plans. I've got to bring these initiatives together, and we've got to come to consensus around priorities. And that's the work that I'm doing right now.
Thank you for that. I like that response. I appreciate that response. And then my last piece is, do you happen to have a number of, so oftentimes we say we're diagnosing students or placing students, which does happen. And how many, but our parents are also becoming more and more aware of needs for various reasons, whatever that looks like. How many parents are actually requesting services for their children?
I don't know the number. I know that the percentage of our initial referrals are it's like 96% parental referrals. Now,
So let me make sure I heard that right. 96% of the referrals
are initiated by parents.
Are initiated by parents.
Yes.
Okay.
Now, some of that is we've got work to do with our multi-tiered system of support. So as Vice President LeBron had shared, there's this dynamic where teachers are concerned. They're struggling and knowing how to get support or what to do for the student in front of them, and they're encouraging the parent to make a referral. That's why we look at the amount of referrals and the percentage of students who get classified, because when they're skewed, it gives a system, it allows us to say there's something going on in the system that we have to better figure out.
Yeah, that's what I want us to do, figure it out, because something's wrong here, right?
And again, we've started that. That's our multi-tiered system of support work.
Yes, and I know that you are doing a great work and a very difficult work, and so I don't want to take away from that work. But yeah, the sense of urgency is certainly there.
Yeah.
I'm going to skip down to the far end of the dais, and we're going to go with Commissioner Griffin, and then we're going to pull it in with Commissioner Malloy before we let you go. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Simmons. I want to applaud you on all the work that you do in researching this information. I always love to see what you have researched and what you have pulled together for us. So I do appreciate the work that you do.
Thank you.
Do an excellent presentation and give us a lot of information, and you explain it as you go. So I appreciate that. So I applaud you for that. I really don't have, I think that's maybe not a question, well, I may have one, but I want to say also that there's a concern when we refer to the kids that may have learning disability or autistic children and the care that they're receiving in daycares or CBOs versus the city school district, and why we are pushing to recruit a lot more of these kids in preschool or pre-K, or when they have these disabilities, when there's a lot of daycares or CBOs out there that can assist, and we're pulling them into the district. My concern is that if we don't have the special education teachers, or we don't have those classroom sizes, why would we continue to recruit those kids when we don't have the space? And then what I found last year is that, viewing when I came in to see what was going on the first day of school, we had a lot of children that were not even able to be placed in the classrooms that had disabilities or had learning disabilities, and that was really sad to see. So I guess my concern would be that I want to make sure that we're not just recruiting children that have these disabilities when we have providers out there that are trained to take care of our children, and we're pulling them away and pulling them into the district, and we don't have some of the resources, or we're not prepared, and they're being put into classrooms that are not able or not conducive to their learning, because that's what I've seen, and that's what I've heard, and that's what I've experienced. Can you speak to that at all?
I can.
Thank you.
So I just want to be clear that we have classrooms that are for students who are classified and identified by the Committee on Preschool Special Education. And then, of course, we have preschool classrooms that are fully general education. We could only add amount of classrooms and seats that we have classrooms for. So we typically have more need than we have classrooms for. And across the state, there's more need than there are providers in any one of the regions, including Monroe County. So you may remember the Attorney General did an audit, and we were one of the school districts. They did an audit across the state around the degree in which students, preschool students, weren't receiving special education support. And again, we mirror across the state that there just aren't enough providers. So the additional support that the board approved allows us to reach more kids that we know require special education support. But unfortunately, I don't believe we will ever have enough support for the amount of need that is there.
Thank you. I guess, and I just ask, just to what you're saying, do we have a number of, the daycare providers that, or, CBOs, whatever you want to call it, that are trained or classified as assisting our children with these disabilities? Do we have a number on that? And is there a way that we're working with them? Or
We do, yes.
Okay,
We
okay.
work really closely
Okay.
with the whole county.
Okay.
So we know all of the preschool agencies in the county that are approved by the county to provide special education support. We know all of the agencies that provide itinerant services. We partner with them in addition to providing our own special education supports.
I just want to close it out. It's not a question, it's just a statement, I promise. I would hope that hopefully in our coming in September that, or in the future, that we could probably do away with recruiting so fast without knowing the spaces that are available in the classrooms, so that we don't fall in a realm of having children not being placed in a timely fashion, or that classroom being full. So I would want to make sure personally that, it's something that we could probably look at to ensure that the classrooms are not overfull and that teachers are not becoming overwhelmed. Because I think that sometimes the teachers become overwhelmed and the students may need a little bit more attention, but not really disabled. And I think that takes away from the teachers being able to teach the other students that are not probably on that same level. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioner Griffin. And to check for my own understanding, if you will, for one moment, entertain me, I want to make sure I heard your response properly. And it kind of aligns with what my experience has been going into CBOs, where they have recognized students have needs, but they're struggling to maybe get them diagnosed because resources or what have you. And there's not necessarily a concerted effort to recruit students with special needs into the district. What I understood you to say is that there is a need that exists.
There's a significant
And
need,
as children
yes.
enroll across the state, is what I heard you say, that there is a more demand and need for special services across the gamut than there are the ability to fill them. So it's not that we're bringing them in and doing, okay, so I want to
You
make
are
sure that.
correct,
And so when I
yes.
hear that, it makes me think of housing. There's a demand for housing, and it's not that people are being recruited to be homeless, they are just homeless. And when I think about that, I think about mental health issues. And so when I think about that and a child presents or a person presents with mental health issues, it's not that we're recruiting them to have those issues. They have them, we're recognizing them, but there's not enough services. And so that's what I'm hearing with this district. There are children with needs that are coming to this district, coming to other districts, and the ability to serve them, there's something going on there.
There's a significant gap
And that is across the state.
across the state.
Okay, and so then we were going to definitely look for updates on how we are across the state providing opportunities to find solutions for that. Before we go, I got two more for you. I said one, I lied.
Okay.
It's Commissioner Malloy, and then it's going to be President Elliott, and then I'll close out. So Commissioner Malloy?
Thank you. Chief Swan, thank you so much for your presentation. It was very informative. And I can't wait to see the impact of everything that you've presented tonight, the impact on our student progress, our students with disabilities, their progress, and their academic achievement. So thank you so much. First question I have is just in regards to slide number 7, just the percentage of students with disabilities in buildings. And obviously, we see that fluctuation or just differences across the board between various buildings. And forgive my ignorance here, but the higher numbers that we're seeing in some of our buildings versus others, could that be because of specialized SPED programs that we have within those buildings?
That is correct, yes.
Okay, all right. So it's not like all of our special education students are getting sent to particular buildings.
Right.
It's those specialized programs.
Yes.
All right, thank you so much. And then finally, I think it would be really helpful with future presentations from the special education department. I know for myself at least, to have that continual or continued understanding of the referral process and what that looks like in our district. I know you've gone through it before with us, and we've had prior chiefs go through it with us. But understanding that referral process as well as not only the referral process, but also the MTSS process. Just to have refreshers on that frequently would be really helpful. It would probably answer a lot of our questions before, so we're not re-asking those questions over and over again. But I know for me, at least, that's helpful to see what that looks like in the district. I know I've been through many of those processes with several of my children. And the declassification process and all of that. But I think it would be a good thing for the community as well to see what those processes look like. So thank you so much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Malloy. I saw your hand. Is it a statement or a question?
Question.
Okay, it's just one?
That's one.
Okay. Go.
I have to apologize. I have a scratchy voice. But this isn't a gotcha question, but if you can answer, you can. If not, but I'd be interested to know how many students have been encouraged to make a referral in order to get a low pass option on the Regents exam. Is there any way of?
I just want to make sure I'm understanding your question. How many students have made a referral to be classified in order to seek the low pass option?
Right on the Regents exam. For example, with students with IEPs or something like that, they're requesting that.
I don't have that data. I'd have to really look at our referral information, but I can just say off the top of my head, that's not anything, when I look at the referral reasons, that I saw either a theme or a red flag in that area.
Yeah, I heard this a couple months ago, actually, that, I shouldn't say I meant a couple weeks ago, that, this was an issue. So, if you can look into it, let us know. I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Patterson. I'm going to end with President Elliott, and thank you again, Chief Swan.
So I just participated in a webinar today entitled Neurodiversity. Oh, sorry. So I just participated in a workshop today entitled Neurodiversity, which is cognitive issues around Tourette syndrome, HDAD, and those kinds of things. And that's my first time hearing that term and what that means. And I don't know if the chief is also under Chief Chris has heard that before, but it talked about neurodiversity in the workplace, but it also referenced that term in terms in education. And so, and what I got out of that from only participating in the one webinar was that the classifications that these people are diagnosed with, that what they discovered is that they really may not even want to identify themselves within that particular diagnosis, and wanted to be just treated regularly. And in our case, being in the classroom, but this also speaks to in the workforce as well. Have you heard that term, and can you share more with me on
Yes,
that?
yes, absolutely. So it used to be called like being neuroatypical. And they've dropped the atypical because what they're finding is these umbrella areas, such as people with attention deficit, people with autism, people with executive functioning needs, they sort of all fall under this umbrella. And they require very different supports. Some, if their needs are met, can be very successful and high functioning, but it's really understanding what they need. And a lot of times, people who are presenting with neurodiversity-like characteristics require support around language, social interpretation, all the soft skills. And those are some of the students when they're young that are tricky to us because we can't figure them out and they can't figure us out. And so we wonder, is it a learning disability? Is it social emotional needs? And sometimes it's just being neurodiverse.
Yeah, that was the term that I just learned today. And from a HR perspective, I have to look at how we incorporate those individuals into our workforce and how we support them in the workforce. And so this is something new. We also do have a intellectual developmental disability department where there are adults in that program. And that's something that we have to also, I believe, discuss with that department to see how in a workplace setting they will be able to function without having the prejudice. So thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, President Ellie. So Chief Swan, thank you again for your
Thank you, everybody.
presentation. We've got a lot of work to do around the consent decree. We've got a lot of outcomes for our children that we need to make sure we achieve, and special education, I'm rooting for you.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right,
I
thank you so very
appreciate the
much.
opportunity.
Okay, I think this concludes the ESA committee meeting of the whole. I wrote a note to myself. Oh, it was about the ESA agenda items. It was noted when we started the meeting. Just take a look. The schedule for topics are attached within the board docs, so you can take a look at that and get an idea of what's coming up and what we will be discussing. Those things do change around from time to time, depending on certain needs. With that said, this concludes the ESA Committee of the Whole. Do I need a
Survey?
motion?
You got your survey?
Oh, yeah, don't forget the board survey. And I'd like to entertain a motion to conclude the meeting.
Third.
Motion by Vice President LeBron, seconded by President Elliott. All in favor? Forget y'all. We're done. Thank you so very much. Thank you, public.
This is the special meeting to convene for consideration of resolutions. But what I'd like to be able to do is to ask for a motion to amend the agenda so that it includes on the agenda to a discussion about the superintendent search process, a board correspondence, and those would be the two things. Others I'll ask on personal privilege. So is there a motion?
Motion.
Moved by Commissioner Simmons, seconded by Commissioner Malloy. Any questions or comments related to that motion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. Then we'll continue. And so there are no speakers for this special meeting. And so we will go into consideration of resolutions. And I'm going to, if it's okay with my colleagues, to bundle resolutions 137 through 152, and then vote individually on resolution 970, 973, or 975, or if we can take those together, understanding that I'm being specific with calling the resolution 970, 973, 975, and then resolutions 116 and through 120. Is everybody okay with that?
We'll still be able to ask the individual
Absolutely.
questions. Okay.
No,
Yeah,
no
that's fine.
problem, no doubt about it. All right, and so can I get a motion for resolutions 137 through 152? Moved by Commissioner Malloy, is there a second? Second. Who's the second? Seconded by Commissioner Simmons. Any questions or comments related to resolutions 137 through 152?
Yes, I have a couple questions.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean.
Commissioner Santiago?
I want to start with resolution 137. I'm just wondering, as the police officers are at these sports events, usually what are their role there at those events?
So at the sports events, they generally do, I'm sorry, they generally do patrol of the area. They respond to any situation that may actually go on in the event, and they are able to, address certain issues that may sort of jump off as teams may be playing together. So generally, it's a quick response, and it has been extremely helpful.
Yeah, and I know that the Rochester Police Department just received some money from us. We voted on this a couple months ago. And I guess my next question would be, I know in previous years we've used Pathways to Peace in different community organizations to work with the young people. My question is, for this year, why aren't we going down that path?
This is in addition to usage of Pathways to Peace and other community partners to also be present and help during those sporting events.
And so I guess my question would be, how effective is it, seeing that we do have community members there, Pathways to Peace, who is highly trained in de-escalation and to handle these situations, how effective it is for us to spend an extra $100,000 on the police department, which, I've said in a couple meetings ago, who already has a hefty budget and who already, their job is to protect the citizens, period. And so the students are the citizens just as much as a regular Rochester citizen. And so, if we already have community members there, Pathways to Peace members there who's working with the students, I just personally don't understand why we're paying the Rochester Police Department an extra $100,000 for them to accomplish the job that they have a couple $1 million budget for in the first place. And so for me personally, I'm not going to support that. And my hope is, and it may pass, but I do hope that it doesn't pass. But my hope is that we are able to tap into the resources that we already have contracted, like Pathways to Peace, and the different resources that we have. Because just to see, the money that we continuously spend on the police to do the job that they already have tax money to do, personally doesn't make sense to me. And so for me personally, that's going to be a no vote for me. And then my last question is for Resolution 145. And I just want to know what the purpose of this is. If we can get a quick explanation for the community and for the other commissioners.
Thank you, Commissioner. Resolution 145 is titled East EPO Administrators Appointed to the Administrative Area and the Aligned RCSD title as shown. And so with the creation of the East EPO several years ago, the district and the Administrators Association and the East EPO chose to create titles that were specific to East. And this has to do with tenure and seniority. And so as East comes back into the district, the 12 administrators who work at East would not be in the same titles as leaders in our district. And so in combining, what we're doing is ensuring that their titles are aligned to what we do in the district, and that's important because their place in seniority title is important relative in case we have future layoff, but also to define probationary periods. So that's why this resolution is tonight.
Okay, I just want to make sure because I know some of these positions, you know, I know specifically for one of them, and nobody in specifics, but specifically for one of them, before they were listed as an educational director or, you know, another title, but now they're as assistant principal. And so I'm just wondering, is that because there's going to be a difference in responsibility, or, you know, what's the plans with that?
So the titles that you see here are the aligned, the new title is aligned to what titles exist in the Rochester City School District. They are on par. And so the individuals in those positions understand that they're on par. The ESA Administrators Union understands that they are on par. And so that's what we're doing this evening.
Okay, all right, then that makes sense to me. But you know, just to recap it all together, for me, the EPO thing makes sense. Thank you for that. But also with paying another $100,000 to the Rochester Police Department after we just paid a couple other $100,000s, it doesn't really make sense with me. Certainly, seeing that we have contracts specifically to other agencies and community agencies that may be more effective than a police officer that's sitting outside of the school.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Simmons?
Thank you, President Elliott. My question was also around agenda item 137. I just wanted to seek clarity on, is that a cost that we've paid historically? And how many officers is that? Can you just break down maybe the duration of time? Like, is that all school year? How many officers are we looking at, give or take? I know you may not have a specific number. And historically, is that what we've done? Not that just because we did it that we need to keep doing it, but historically, what does that look like?
So I do know that we did in fact do this last year. They generally do stay for the duration of the game. How many individuals? I'm not sure. I can get those data for you. But yeah, I mean, do you know how many, Deputy Turner, specifically?
Yeah, it all depends on what games, who's playing against who, and what the intel tells us. So that all depends on how many patrols will be there, and also if there is a need for additional police support outside of who's there, they're also able to call for backup.
Okay, and I'm hearing Commissioner Malloy say maybe about 3 to 4 per.
It all depends. I asked Chief Scott earlier tonight on this. I was going to ask her just so that it was on record. I don't want to speak for Chief Scott,
Let me
of course,
just
but
make sure that Commissioner Simmons is finished.
My last thing is, so you said this happened, last year we did this, but like historically, outside of just last year, like is there like over the past 5 years, 7 years, 3 years, 4?
Correct.
Is
Correct. It's been a long-term relationship when it comes to games, especially there's periods of time where things, you know what I mean, depending what's going on. But as long as I would say at least for the last 10 years, we've used them in sporting, for athletics and sporting events.
at this cost? Yeah, I've seen them, so, okay. All right,
The
thank
cost,
you.
the cost changes because every year, yeah, inflation and everything else, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I didn't mean to interrupt. I'm so sorry. I did ask this question a little bit earlier to our chief, and I wanted to bring it up on record, so I'm glad that other commissioners have. And so I don't want to speak on behalf of Chief Scott, but he did convey to me that this has been an increase from in the past. Historically, it's been about $50,000, so we doubled it, so now it's $100,000. And that's anywhere from 2 to 4 officers who would be available if needed at the events. I think for me personally, I would love to see more of a description of what this is going to entail, just on the question log, if we could, just have an answer to that. And, you know, in addition to how many officers, in what capacity are they serving, just that we have more of that information. But thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for resolutions 137 through 152?
Yes.
Commissioner Patterson?
You know, again, you know, we talk about school safety, and I can pretty much boil this down to one sentence, and it's a reality that something could occur within our schools, whether it's a stabbing or a shooting. And if there is a shooting, police are paid to run into the schools when everyone else, including Pathways of Peace, is running outside the school. So these are the things that, you know, I try to, you know, get across to, and I'm respectful of other board members and their comments and things like that, I am. But when you talk about years of experience, 27 years of experience in law enforcement, and that we open ourselves up to liability if something happens in those schools and we don't even have the police presence there. So whether it's 50,000 or whatever, it's 100,000, you know, we're spending that money on an administrative position. But again, I go back to a child's life and the value of it. What's it worth? And it's very important that we, you know, put our police, our law enforcement officers in a position to save lives. And seconds matter. And I think any parent that is child has been the victim of violence would tell you that. I don't think that they would vote against police being on the property and the cost of having that police officer on the property. So I said enough.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Malloy, my apologies for cutting you off. I thought you were done, so.
Yeah, I kind of made it sound like I was, and then I realized I had my other questions. The next question I had was on number 140, just our contract sub positions. I know this has a lot to do with HC. I know that when looking at this, a concern that's been raised just by various teachers in the district is that many of our teachers are leaving the district for better pay elsewhere. Some of our most experienced teachers, you know, people with 20-plus years of experience. And I think the only concern I have is that, are we being equitable when we're getting contract substitutes hired? Are we being equitable in terms of pay? Because there are people who've worked here who, for 20-plus years, who are feeling that people are coming in as contract subs for a much higher pay rate. And I know we're desperate for staff at this point, but that has been expressed to me, and I know, are we looking at pay equity for our teachers when comparing to contract substitutes?
Thank you for the question. We don't consider contract substitutes to be any different than another teacher. Teachers are teachers. So when we look at compensation of all of our teachers, we follow our contract, we follow the salary grid, and the practices and agreements that we have between the district and the Rochester Teachers Association. And so these salaries are set based on those agreements and practices.
And that applies to contract subs as well?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so I didn't want to like put any misinformation out in the community, but these are concerns that come my way, so I felt it was I'm just doing my due diligence there. Thank you so much for that. My next question was regarding 141, the civil service positions. Are these newly created positions under our 24-25 budget, or were they just changes in designation? I just had some questions about, have they always been civil service positions, or are they AZAR positions?
Each of the positions listed there are civil service positions.
And they always have been?
They are all civil service titles. I guess I would say the executive director of budget was most recently a certificated leader. However, it can be either certificated or civil service. The supervising Medicaid analyst title is a new title that we're using in the district. It was not previously in the district, but is in alignment with civil service.
Okay, so they don't fall under the AZAR umbrella? They do, okay, even though they are civil service. I'd love to understand more about what that entails, so sorry for my ignorance there, but thank you for answering that. And then number 142, the various positions listed. Oh, you just answered that, sorry. 151, those positions that are listed, are those long-term sub-positions for teaching?
So on Resolution 151, non-tenure bearing positions, those are positions at home hospital.
Oh, okay, all right, that makes
So
sense.
oftentimes, some of our more experienced educators may go there, so that may be why you're seeing experienced people in those positions.
Right, and why would it say non-tenure bearing position then?
So home hospital is a area where tenure is not earned. It has a separate set of agreements between the districts and the association.
Thank you, that's very good to know.
Yes, unusual questions. This resolution doesn't come up that often.
Yeah, okay. And then my final one, bear with me, number 152, the amendments to those resolutions. It lists elementary as the former title that's being changed to director. So were these already admin areas? And what does the elementary necessarily mean here? Were these directors of
Yep, so
elementary school, or?
this resolution is a resolution where we submit corrections or changes,
Right.
right? And some of those changes could be per the request of the employee, such as they set a resignation date and they need to change it to be a week earlier, a week later. In the case of the questions you're asking, last month when we submitted the tenure resolution for these two individuals, the wrong tenure area was on it, so this is to correct that.
Okay, so that's why it's been changed to director. I was just wondering. Thank you so much, that's all.
Commissioner Santiago?
I just want to quickly make clear, because I feel like every time I bring up this concern, it's taken way out of context. When I bring up this concern, I'm simply speaking about the fact of not understanding why we are paying the police department, who's already paid to protect the citizens, when the students are the citizens just as much as everybody else on the street is a citizen. And so when I bring this up, I don't negate or not understand the importance of the police officer or the police department responding to an issue or protecting our students' lives. But I question why we are paying extra $1 million to a department that already has millions of dollars to do the job that they're already being paid to do millions of dollars for. And the truth is the police department, and my question and my concern is, why do we not invest back into our community for prevention instead of a response? The police department responds. They don't prevent. And we've been seeing this on our streets every single day. We've been seeing it with the mass shootings. We've been seeing it with the different things that's been going on in the news. They don't prevent, they respond. And so why are we paying for them to respond when they already have millions on top of millions of dollars in their budget to respond to when we can be spending money to prevent? And so that's just my concern. I don't speak about and I don't negate the fact that police officers are important and that our students' lives are important. I care about safety just as everybody else on this board cares about safety. But I believe that there's effective and strategic ways to prevent and to respond to these issues. And it doesn't make sense to me to spend extra money, give extra millions of dollars to a department that's paid to do what we are paying them extra to do. And so that's my concern. It's not about, whether a police officer is important or not. I believe that they are important. But it's about how do we effectively and strategically prevent violence and prevent accidents and respond to those accidents. And so that's my concern. I just want to make that clear, and that, make that clear right now, because every time I bring up that concern, it's blown way out of proportion. And so my vote is still no. That didn't change my mind.
Thank you. Commissioner Simmons?
Thank you, President Elliott. I just had a question for clarification around the building subs. Long-term subs and dedicated building subs, are those the same thing, or tell me the difference?
Thank you for the question. So building substitute teachers are a full-time FTE that are assigned to a school, which we then recruit and hire for. And someone essentially makes a commitment to work in that position for the entire year. That building sub is staffed at that school for use by the school to fill any needs that they might have. And schools use them in whatever way they need to fill those vacancies. That's different than a long-term sub, which could be a much more temporary position. It could be 6 months, it could be a week, it could be 2 weeks, it could be 3 months. So that's essentially the difference.
Okay, so they're at a building long-term, but they essentially can be moved around, whereas the building sub is dedicated exclusively to that school community. And we do still have like building subs, right? Dedicated building subs?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
But we've greatly reduced the number that we had last year.
Yeah.
All right. So with regard to resolutions 137 and 152, all those in favor? Any opposed?
To every resolution excluding resolution 137.
All right, thank you. Is there a motion for resolutions 970, 973, and 975?
So, motion?
Moved by Commissioner Malloy, seconded by Commissioner Griffin. Any questions or comments related to resolutions 970, 973, and 975? Any questions? All right, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Is there a motion for resolutions 116 through 120?
Motion.
Moved by Commissioner, Vice President LeBron, seconded by Commissioner Santiago. Any questions or comments related to resolutions 116 through 120? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, thank you, motion carries. So that concludes our consideration of resolutions, and then a couple of items for a discussion. Under number 4 is the board correspondent. There was a letter that was sent by me with regard to the,
Consent decree.
no, let me just bring it up, got it here. Yes, special education, I believe it is. And so the state monitors academic and financial plan around special education. And this information was provided by the superintendent and the state monitor that we responded to that. This is in reference to the violation that we had around special education. And so we put this letter together and forwarded it. And so Commissioner Santiago wanted to have a conversation about it.
Yeah, very quickly, and not to call any, I think, it's just to be as transparent as possible. But I did see that there was some changes as far as the plan for the special education department and who will be supervising it. And I just wanted to ensure before my name is attached to something supporting it, that I understood just what that plan was and that the special education department was getting the proper supervision that's needed. And so I'll just love to hear from the superintendent what the plan is moving forward, because it needs some attention. And so I just want to make sure that's getting all the attention that it needs.
Sure. So thank you for the question, Commissioner Santiago. So there's, in a sense, two facets around special education. There's an extreme operationalized side, and then there is the academic or instructional components of special education. This evening, you heard a lot of the instructional components around special education. However, there are, we allude to items such as Medicaid and billing and certain services that are provided. So in a sense, with me becoming interim superintendent, I have only one deputy and have elected to do something specifically different with my role until a decision was made around a permanent search. So as a result, what is happening is on a bi-weekly basis, I meet with each school chief as well as the Senior Director of Educator Effectiveness, as well as the Chief Academic Officer. And that meeting is purely instructional. We talk about student outcomes. We talk about what professional learnings we need for our school leaders. What do we want our teachers to be able to do by the end of the school year? We talk about the academic components. So because I can't have everyone as a superintendent to supervise specifically, myself and Deputy Turner coordinate on a weekly, bi-weekly basis as needed. We are very much in touch about what is happening with all of our direct reports, because in a sense, I am responsible for the entire cabinet. However, she does share, as well as Chief Evans now, shares some of that load in the supervision of the employees. So with that being said, I am supervising the instructional component of our organization. I feel that that was a need as the superintendent because that's where we have not been steadfast. My partner, and she's still my partner, Deputy Turner, she will support the monitoring of the administration point of special education. So in a nutshell, that is what we were doing to satisfy the requirement of the state monitor, and that's how we responded to the commissioner.
Yeah,
Commissioner Santiago?
to existence.
mhm.
So I just want to make sure, because I know one thing, and some of the other commissioners may remember this, but as we were doing some community events speaking about the next superintendent, a lot of the community members were speaking about how much is put on to the superintendent, which can be one of the factors of why we lose superintendents as much as we do. And so I just want to make sure, seeing that before there was a deputy superintendent, there were other people carrying that load, and of course still with direct report to the superintendent. If you feel like, you have, not to make it super personal, but I just want to make sure that we're doing our due diligence to take care of our staff member, to make sure that we are staying as stable as possible in this district. And so I just want to make sure that you believe with the workload, you're still able to carry that without that extra support behind you.
So I would say that I do have the support. I'm trying to build a strong team around me so that I can be steadfast on student outcomes. And, meetings like tonight and how we were able to ask questions around special education, around what's happening with our iReady data, that's where I need to be focused. I need to be in schools. I need to be working with principals. I need to be seeing what's happening in classrooms. I need to be talking to children. And the more space I get to do that, the better off we will be as a district. So I needed, and this is with the guidance of our state monitor, I said, Mr. Alicea, give me a recommendation. He said, you need to be directly in these schools. That's the area we have not spent enough focus on. And that's something that's very passionate to me as an educator. I told you I'm a teacher at heart. And I know that the change doesn't happen up here. It doesn't happen in central office. The change happens in schools. So the more I can stay focused in that regard, the better it will be. My job is actually going to get easier if I have the time and space to actually work with those individuals in the back to make sure that we are able to stay focused on student outcomes.
And yeah, I just want to say thank you to that. I just wanted to make sure that, we're all good on that. And I'm glad to hear that you feel strong. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other questions? Commissioner Malloy?
Thank you. I'm really glad that we brought up the topic, or at least you brought up the topic. Commissioner Santiago, thank you so much for the response and the clarification surrounding this particular letter, because as Commissioner Santiago said, before we attach our name to anything, it's nice to be able to have that conversation and review it. And I think it's also, in addition to that, a governance matter as well. Any official correspondence going out from the board attaching all our names to it, it would be really helpful to be able to review those in advance before it gets sent out. I liked the letter to begin with. I thought it was great, but it would be nice to get that in advance, just to review in case we didn't want to attach our name to something. I know that's been past practice, but again, thank you for the opportunity to discuss this in an open session.
Any other questions?
I just want to give a comment.
Vice President LeBron?
Yeah, I just want to, it is past practice that any letters sent are sent to all the board members, and I just want to uplift that in the past, we do that through the board clerk sending it out, and all of us responding back to the board clerk within a reasonable time frame. Sometimes some of these things do require us to respond within 24 hours. We have board members that don't ever respond to the board clerk's staff emails. So I just want to uplift that on one hand, yes, we have to make sure that everyone's eyes agree, because I do agree with the points being made. If anybody's name is on a letter, you know, I'd be the first one. I want to know too, because there are times I have asked to have my name removed off letters that this board and this district have sent out. But on the same side, I just want to remind all board members that the protocol for that is that we typically have the board clerk send out the email, one, so we are not breaking open meetings laws and making a decision that way. And two, that way we all sort of get our eyes on it, can provide her the feedback, and then she can work directly with President Elliott to edit, and then keep that dance going till we have a final draft that is approved by all. But we do need to be responsive to the board staff when they're sending
Absolutely.
emails asking for, you know, a response. That's all. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay. And so I'm going to give the superintendent a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, President Elliott. As I mentioned before, there are some changes that were voted on this evening, and one of my future appointees is actually here in the audience, and I would like all of the commissioners to welcome one of our new chief of schools for secondary education, Mr. Muscadri. So he was extremely impressive in his interview. Myself and the state monitor both took part in that interview as per the academic plan. I think Mr. Muscadri's addition to our executive cabinet is going to further help with the transition of the East High School EPO, as well as provide extreme guidance for our secondary school leaders. And I know that there's a great amount of respect for the work that he has done. And Mr. Muscadri, I think you should come up and make a few comments. Mr. Washington, do you have, thank you. Yep, put him on the spot like I was. Yep.
He knew you was.
So thank you. It is a complete honor and privilege to serve in this role. I'm entering my 25th year in this district. I started my career in this district as a math teacher. I'm committed, I'm motivated, and I look forward to building relationships with the Board of Education and the members of the cabinet. So thank you. Thank you for entrusting me in the work, and I look forward to the work ahead.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. And just a couple of points of personal privilege that I have before we ask for a motion to go into executive session. I just want to remind my colleagues about the retreat that we're going to have on the 19th and 20th, and that you got to be on time. It's very important that we are on time. I know one board member there's an exception there, but he's got to be on time when you say you're going to be on time, because they don't play. And so that's important. I wanted to uplift that. That's going to be a lot of work on Sunday and on Monday. I also want to just uplift the board members of color. That dinner is going to be on the 26th. We're going to have also the new superintendents of color that's also going to be at the meeting. Drs. Barbara Mullen and Dr. Tasha Potter are also going to be at that meeting as well. It was very rich before, and looking forward to it. We're having a new board member from West Irondequoit to join, and we'll also have the former board member from Greece to also join us as well. So just want to uplift that up. And then lastly, the HBCU Classic that's coming into Rochester, New York. I already got my tickets. Me too. So that's coming, and so, Mr. Superintendent, if we can have some of our babies to participate in that, because that's going to be something to behold. I think the whole weekend is being planned with activities, and so I'm looking forward to that as well. I know that there are probably going to be some people there the night before setting up them grills and everything, so just wanted to also point that out. And then lastly, I need to get a motion to go into executive, something else before I do that? All
Two
right.
things. First, your retreat is on Sunday, the 18th, and Monday, the 19th, not
Oh,
the 20th.
all right, thank you for the correction.
Second, you wanted to talk about a superintendent search process.
Yes, go ahead, I'm sorry.
So, board members received calendar invites as well as some information that you all, in your July business meeting, you agreed to have Hazard, Young, and Atia be the superintendent search firm. And so they will be coming to join you on August 27th to go over that planning document, which was shared and should be reviewed, coming to the meeting ready to make some decisions around how you all want to engage the community in this process. So that will be the first opportunity for the community to get an insight into what's going to happen through the superintendent search process. And I'm not sure if you wanted me to share any other details, President Elliott, specifically.
All right. Say that again?
Oh, I said, was there other details specifically that you wanted me to share other than?
Yep, that's it. Any questions around that? All right. So I need a motion to go into executive session to discuss matters leading to the appointment or employment of a particular person, to discuss matters made confidential pursuant to federal or state law, and to receive the advice of the general counsel as permitted by Section 105 of the open meeting laws. Is there a motion?
Motion. Second.
All right, moved by Vice President LeBron, seconded by Commissioner Malloy. Are you the one that seconded, Commissioner Malloy?
yes,
All right.
yeah.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you. And so we will say goodnight from after the executive session, but we'll say it here, excuse me. Good night. Please join us again soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.